31st, known as Reformation Day, or the Thursday before Election Day. Take your pick. And we are going to talk, about the coming election, because Gretchen lives with this cloud of guilt hanging over her head, that she may have done something to create the current conditions that we all suffer. But actually, Gretchen, I've been thinking about this, and I think all three of you can speak to this. I was at an ecumenical gathering on Tuesday, not just Christian, like interfaith, and and these gatherings are always the same. That what we have in common is not God, but liberalism. That the group purports to be nonpartisan, but everyone speaks in a way that just assumes everyone in the room is a Democrat. United Methodist clergy gatherings are like this too. And I may agree with some of the opinions I heard, but the contempt with which people spoke about Donald Trump, it's left me with this thought, right? That all four of us belong to a Christian tradition that is supposed to have a particular prejudice for the poor, because in Jesus, God became poor. And one of the things that has happened with Donald Trump is that the political parties have realigned such that Donald Trump is empowered in no small degree by a working class movement of populists that help give him an electoral majority, if not a popular majority. And so I'm thinking, how do we as Christians think about Donald Trump, and more importantly, Trumpism, if we're supposed to be in favor of the poor, but some not small percentage of people really do believe what Joe Biden said, that Trump supporters are garbage.
Well, okay, I do want to hop in here and defend the apostrophe situation, because the thing is, we all know that Joe Biden has a hard time saying what he means.
Which is why he should not have been
Which is why he's not on the ballot right now, right? His intention was not, and I'm going to defend this to the hilt, because I feel like I know him a little bit better now. He's not a half America is trash kind of a guy. He doesn't talk like that. He doesn't think like that. What he was saying is, the only thing that I see that is garbage is the stuff coming out of his supporters' mouths on that stage. He was talking about that rally being garbage, and that rally was garbage. There was a lot of garbage in that rally. That's what he intended to say. I know it doesn't matter at this point. It gave them something to run with, and they ran with it. But I think that just sort of is indicative of the climate that we're in, right? Is no grace is given ever on any side. So
I agree. It was just a sundowning stumble of words.
It was. And it was a stark explanation of why he's not actually out. Everyone's like, why isn't Joe Biden out stumping for Kamala Harris? I think we now know. I mean, bless him. But yeah. So, but I don't think that content. I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I'm not in those rooms with you. I'm kind of a little surprised to hear it, but I would expect that. I know the contempt that I hear on the other side. When people, in my Republican circles or evangelical circles, think when they maybe haven't listened to my podcast and don't understand where I'm coming from, and they think I'm safe. There's a lot of people that think that Kamala Harris is, straight from the devil, and that all Democrats are going to hell. And that's kind of, I had a grandmother that believed that all Democrats were going to hell. So, and she took that to the grave, and she was at church every minute that the door was open, and so I don't know how you square that. I don't know.
Todd, cheer.
I just keep going back. I've been thinking a lot about an event that Jason, Todd, and I were at back in 2017 in California, where this was right after Trump had been, I guess it was maybe over his first inauguration. And with that same attitude, Jason, of just the assumption that everybody in the room believes the same thing, voted the same way, and the way that we were speaking about one another. And this was supposed to be, again, coming from this Christian perspective. And then you or I, maybe it's Christian Piet, made the comment that statistically, someone in the room, at least one person that was in that room, had voted for Donald Trump. And the way that we were speaking about one another was othering, was casting these huge assumptions on folks. And that was back in 2017. And it's only been amplified since then, to the point where I don't know, as a pastor, how to lead people in having these conversations about voting, about the mess that we're in, whether it's Gretchen's fault or not. I don't know how to talk. I don't know how to talk about this in a way that doesn't lead to othering. Like, we're hosting one of those interfaith events at my church on Monday, and it's nonpartisan. We're asking people not to bring signs for one candidate or the other. But I know the group that's going to show up, and I know the types of things that are going to be said, and it's going to be anti-Trump, pro-Harris, but it's going to be kind of clouded in this. We all have more when we have more in common than we don't. We're just going to kind of skirt around the issue. And so one of the things I'm just really wrestling is I don't know how to talk about this anymore. Because my congregation wants me to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it.
They do want you to talk about it?
They want to know where I stand. And I'm like, well, if you haven't figured that out after the last 18 months, then, I mean, maybe I haven't been clear about how I think God's grace and God's love is for everyone. And that nobody would be garbage. But yeah, that's where I'm at right now. I don't know. And part of it, I think, is the unknown of what's going to happen in 5 days, or in 10 days, or 2 months from now. And I think that maybe that's kind of the cloud that's been hanging over where I'm at.
Todd, you're in a completely different part of the country than Tier and I.
Oh, very different part of the country.
He's in real America. We're just over here on the coast.
I saw the.
Are you in Oklahoma City, Todd?
I'm just southwest of Oklahoma City. I'm in Tuttle, so I'm just
okay. Yeah, I know
15 minutes away. Yeah.
Okay.
And so I saw the invitation, saw the subject. I was getting ready, and I had a moment that said, I just can't wait till November the 6th. Now, I realize for many people, they don't think the election will be settled by the 6th, but figuratively, the campaigning is over, and the part of me, I'm just, I'm fairly worn out. And maybe that's this morning. I had a conversation with a young friend, and I was struck, who's in Oklahoma, a solid guy, good thinker, thinks well politically, I think. But I kept hearing justifications. And he didn't tell me who he's voting for. And I'm fairly certain he's not voting for Donald Trump. But still, yet in the analysis, it was justification after justification. And at some point, when you begin working through analogies and you're making comparisons, it dawned on me that we're really not in an apples to apples situation, and that probably fits when we at our church talk or use the word politics, which I've tried to avoid because most people hear partisan and not the word politics. And so 9 years ago, 2015, 16, I was a bit more vocal about kind of how I was thinking, although I didn't vote for any president in 2016. And I can't remember if I did in 2020. But it dawned on me that we've been so ensnared in a divisive culture that can't think past how we live together, but only how we win. And that has its own element within the body of Christ, because we're always trying to beat the Methodists to the cafeteria. Cue the laughing track, right? um, but seriously, we are, I was raised in an environment where we were always trying to tout while we had one up on everybody else. And then you discover that, like, no, they're really good people who don't belong to your denomination, and they have a few different perspectives on this subject or that, this passage of scripture or that, and they're really nice people, fun to hang out with. I mean, I even invited Jason to my house recently. I mean, come on, it's but I think that there's always been this underlying thing, and it's just been amplified, that really what it's all about is about winning, and not thinking about the person next to you. And so long as you're on my team, then we're good. But if you're not on my team, then I really don't have a whole lot of time for you. And that's before you ever get into whose conspiracies are best. I don't, that sort of thing. But so here we've tried to just shy away from making that. I'm certain they'd like to know maybe from time to time what I think, but I'm kind of with Tier. I've been here 30 years, and if you haven't quite figured out the things that we talk about in terms of grace and others and um, the goodness of God, then I don't know that you can hear anything.
Well, I think that's it. I don't know if you can hear anything. Maybe it's to the point where we don't want to hear anything.
So,
we don't want to hear anything that's going to either challenge us to see one another in a different way. Because it's great that it's great that I can get up and say, my tagline for the last year for my church is God loves you just the way you are, but God loves you too much to leave you just as you are. Right. And it's great to say that God loves everybody, but then for me to have to turn around and say that I love, the MAGA, the MAGA haunted house guy down the street, like that.
You have one of those too. I have one of those too. It's like a lot of Trump signs and a bunch of scary like skeletons and blood and stuff.
I can't figure out if it's
we call it Insurrection House. What?
Well, I at first I thought it was like just scary Halloween decorations. I was like, oh, that's funny. I see where you're going.
Judge Alito lives near you, right?
Yeah, Judge Alito is like two. Yeah, they're more of a flag house actually than a sign.
I've heard.
Well, I mean, I think from my perspective on that, to what you're saying, Tier, is when I was really more in the game, right? So it was Bush and then Obama, McCain, all that time. I didn't think, and neither did Democrats that I know. Democrats didn't necessarily think I was a bad person because I was trying to, help John McCain raise money or work for George Bush or I didn't vote for Barack Obama. I think Trump has brought something into the vernacular and into the conversation and to our tone. And think about it, it's been every day shouting at us in capital letters for 9 years. And so I think the divisiveness is deep and wide. And I think now it is natural for people to see somebody on the other side, not as a different political stripe or even Methodist versus Baptist versus whatever, but a bad human being. I mean, I think people will, and I think in particular, I think a lot of Christians that are never Trump Christians look at still Trump Christians and think, how on earth do you overlay the gospel of Christ with this person that it seems like you're worshiping more, your politics are taking the place of your faith. And it feels that way, I think, to a lot of people. And I think a lot of people are wondering I'm going to a wedding tomorrow in North Carolina with all of my Oklahoma family and Texas family, and to a person, I mean, there'll be like 4 Harris people there, but mostly they're going to be all Trumpers. And I've got cousins that send me that are mortified by this podcast that I do. They cannot believe that I'm supporting Harris. I get cousins texting me saying, I'm praying for you because I'm definitely on the Hell Express because I don't like the most despicable candidate for president that in history. I mean, he's not, there's nothing about Donald Trump that's a Christian person. I get that we're supposed to have grace for everyone, but I don't see that overlay. I don't see that Venn diagram. So somebody help me out there.
So my question is, if you wander into a pornographic video store in North Carolina this weekend, what are the chances you're going to run into North Carolina's lieutenant governor? Probably greater than 50%.
Definitely greater than 50%. Yeah. He's probably campaigning there, like out front.
And I'm not just being cheeky.
I see what you did
there. Because it's not just Trump anymore. And, your
Right.
podcast is called The Mess Is Mine. But one of the things that you got right, I think, is that your party in the 90s kept saying over and over again that character counts. And I think what we've seen over the last 10 years is that Donald Trump's absence of character has corrupted the party underneath him. And, I mentioned to Todd when we were out in Oklahoma, I mentioned to Todd, that I would love to be able to stand up in my pulpit and say, there's a whole lot of you who would like me to preach a sermon condemning Donald Trump for his bad character, his serial adultery, his abuse of women. The problem is the other party, since I was in high school, has defended, justified, and continues to platform a president who did exactly the same thing. And so it's, that's not to say that the two are equivalent. But I think in some respects, the choices the Democratic Party made it more difficult to articulate clearly the corrupt character of Donald Trump. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Are you referring to Clinton?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, but Clinton's been off the stage for, a while.
He spoke for like 90 minutes at the convention.
Oh, and I don't know why they did that. I really don't. They didn't need him. I don't know why they opened that can of worms, but I think that Donald Trump's moral failings goes beyond, to me, well beyond Bill Clinton's moral failings. I mean, Bill Clinton, to my knowledge, never called other human beings vermin. He didn't talk about the enemy within. He didn't call like immigrants animals. Like the language has gotten really, really rough. Like it's more than being a cheater or having a zipper problem. And I don't mean to diminish that at all. Like the guy was, had a problem with the truth. He had a problem with his, habits, but I think that's a false equivocation a little bit because Trump, that's where he starts. I mean, he starts with sexual predatory activity and then escalates from there all the way to, attacking the Constitution. So, I mean, there's a lot more in that bucket than just, having a lack of moral aptitude for.
Oh yeah, I'm not trying to draw an equivalence between the two. I am trying to say that it makes some of what I hear as self-righteous condemnation of Republicans. It rings hollow to me.
Mm-hmm.
But self-righteous condemnation is the best kind, because at least at the end of the day, like you feel good. You're like, I told them, look at me up on my moral high ground.
So Gretchen, you're the only one here who has done this professionally. What is your assessment of the state of play?
Read the tea leaves for us.
Read the tea leaves. I feel weirdly. I mean, I want to knock on wood. I think that most of the polling, the stuff that we're seeing, is a little off. It feels to me like she's got more momentum than is being reflected in the numbers. And I base that on a few things. Number one, if you've noticed, Trump's, everybody says this, it's not anything new, but Trump's got a really high floor and a really low ceiling. He hits 46%, 47 almost percent He's never hit 50. More people don't like him than do. So that's where you're starting. Then you're starting with the Republican Party, which is, some are holding their nose, some are gleefully going to the polls and supporting him for the third time in a row. Now, remember, he won in 2016. He lost the midterms in 2018. He lost the re-election in 2020, and he lost midterms for his team in 2022. So he's not exactly a winning machine. And
Right.
the
So
numbers.
You said he lost in 2020?
I know, isn't that funny? I don't know. That's just what the Electoral College said. But I think, I think that. And by the way, if there is anybody out there that does question that, I did just do an interview with a Republican lawyer named Ben Ginsburg that can answer all your questions about the 2020 election. But anyway, so you start with there are fewer Republicans in the country than there are Democrats. There are fewer men voters than there are women. If you look at all the piles, and then you've also got someplace between 7 and 10% of the registered Republicans who will never cast a vote for Donald Trump again post January 6th. And so there's too many piles of people that are peeling away from him. He's got his loyal base, and they're incredibly loyal. Like, he could eat a baby on stage and they would still vote for him.
Don't give him any ideas.
But there's not enough of those people. And so it's really a turnout game. And so then if you pivot to that and you look at they've got Plouffe doing groundwork on the Democrat side. The Republicans don't have too much of a ground game now. They're counting on Elon Musk to do a lot of their turnout, which is an interesting strategy. I know he can buy people $1 million at a time, but that takes a lot of time.
Well, he's busy today. He's in court.
And my house, I've been knocked 3 times for a Kamala Harris person. No Trump person has come here, and I don't have any yard signs. So, and this is Virginia. This isn't a battleground state. So all that to say, I feel like, I know that the pollsters are weighting their polls a little bit because they're so gun shy from 16. And I think they're anticipating a certain amount of a secret Trump vote. And I personally think that's a mistake. I don't think Trump voters are shameful anymore. I think they're loud and proud. I think they're all about Donald Trump. I think their signs are 600 feet tall. Like, they're wearing shirts with blood and fists in the air. Like, they're not shy about being a Donald Trump fan anymore. So I think more than that, you're going to have a lot of people that live in red hat towns and are married to red hat people that are going to go in that booth, and they're going to pull the lever of Kamala Harris and not tell anybody. That's what I think you're going to see a lot of. And I think you could actually see, I think Ted Cruz could lose in Texas. I'm feeling there's just more movement out there that people aren't really willing to say out loud. I was at a wedding last week in North Carolina too. It's my North Carolina wedding month. And I was with a whole bunch of Texans there, and they're all Republicans. Every one of them is Republicans. None of them are voting for Donald Trump. They've just had it. And they're not political people. They're just normal people, right? They aren't really in the business. They're very successful. They're all college educated. They're all, but they're not voting for Trump. And some of them will leave it blank, and some of them will vote for Harris. But I thought that was interesting because they're smack in the middle of Dallas. Like, that's a heavy, this part of Dallas where they're from is very heavily Trump country. So I think that she's going to win, and I think she's going to win north of 300 electoral votes. That's what I think.
Who has a more punchable face, Ted Cruz or JD Vance?
That's a great question. I'd love the chance. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, it's funny. It's like JD Vance is the only person that makes Ted Cruz look less creepy to me. I guess he probably likes JD, huh?
And with JD Vance, I always think the problem is when you alienate all celebrities from your party, you then have no one who you can rely upon to do makeup well.
Let's be honest. I mean, we never had any celebrities anyway. We had the Oak Ridge Boys. We had that one lady from Designing Women. And I think that's about
Clint Eastwood. Yeah, Clint Eastwood.
Yeah.
Who was the dad from National Treasure? Who was that dad?
Jon Voight. He's insane.
Oh yeah. He's
Dennis Quaid.
There. Yep.
I should have opened the store.
Hulk Hogan.
So
did you see him? By the way, did you see Hulk Hogan try to tear his shirt the other night at the rally? It took him a few tries.
Now, if you asked me to tear my shirt right now, I couldn't do it either. But that's not what my shtick
Well,
is.
it's not your shtick. Yeah.
He must not be roided up anymore. But Gretchen, I know. So Todd and I know a few pastors who I suspect are shy Trump voters and won't just own their commitments. They live in purple or red places,
Mhm.
and the way it comes out instead is constantly second guessing the Democratic Party and saying, "Well, if only
Mhm.
Kamala had done this or this, she'd be
Mhm.
in a much stronger position." And I find this exhausting.
Mhm.
But is there anything that you think she could have done differently as a candidate?
That Kamala could have done differently?
Mhm.
I actually think she's run a pretty there's a couple of answers that she should have had like a really solid answer to. I mean, a couple of things. What would you do different from Joe Biden? That should have had a better answer. How would you have addressed the immigration issue? She should have very clearly said, by the way, I am not the border czar. I was never the border czar. That was never my assignment. And I think she's not made a really clear distinction between policy. Like, why don't you name me some of Mike Pence's policies? Like, vice presidents don't set policy, right? And that's a pretty basic fundamental thing that she could have easily said and hasn't made as clear. Now, that being said, she's been in this game for 90 days. And would she have been better off and a sharper candidate if they had done, a mini convention or chosen somebody else? I think they might have been better off for that. But the problem is Joe Biden didn't get out of the way in time to really make that happen. We just the clock ran too long, and then there really was no viable alternative, in my view, to really have any kind of even a mini primary. You might have ended up with a different candidate. But I was not a Kamala fan. I've been pleasantly surprised. I'm surprised and pleased that she's run to the center. I'm happy that she's willing to put Republicans in her cabinet, that she seems to, to want to govern from a centrist position. And frankly, if you look at extremes, like she seems a way less extreme right now than Donald Trump does. When you look at her rhetoric and what she's saying, she's talking about unification. She's talking about being a capitalist. She's talking about working together and reaching across the aisle. I'm not hearing any of that from Donald Trump, except the capitalist part, and only for some people. So I don't hear, people love to beat her up and she needs to be perfect, which I think is interesting given the standard that Donald Trump is held to, which is none whatsoever, which is a guy who can, stand up and talk about Latino sex lives and call women, every name under the sun on stage at your final closing statement to the American people is that Kamala is the Antichrist. That really?
Or oh my gosh, and the jokes that got cut from that guy.
Yeah, the joke that because they thought the C word was just a little bit in poor taste, right? But disparaging an entire territory of the United States and every Latin person, every Latino in the nation, that's okay. That's not in poor taste. It's just, and the fact that, okay, so yes, it wasn't him that said those things. Has he distanced himself? Has he apologized? Has he reached out? No, he hasn't, and he won't. So that's the part that's like, I don't think she has been perfect, but that campaign has been run better than any campaign that I think I've seen. And for a 90-day campaign, it's been pretty close to flawless. She did need to have a couple of better canned answers, but aside of that, I think they've done a pretty good job.
If
Well, I think
you
that's
are
where
wrong,
that's where we're going back to the comments about Puerto Rico. I think that's probably where I'm to the point where I don't know what to say, because for those who are voting in theory with with Christianity as the basis of how they view the world, to completely mock, disregard an entire group of people and then say and be okay with that happening just seems completely it is contradictory to the gospel. And I don't know how the evangelical vote, or what Christian vote, whatever you want to call it, still remains with Trump and not and what seems more of like a blind loyalty to him
Mhm.
rather than the cross. Not that you should have a blind allegiance to the cross, but you know what I'm saying.
I did see a poll recently, I think from Ryan Burge last week, that showed Trump running behind 3 to 5 points behind with Catholics and different Protestant groups than last time. That he was bleeding a small
Mhm.
percentage of folks who'd voted for him before.
Yeah. Well, I think that's right with Catholics. I think that white evangelical number is sitting still at about 82%, and that's where it's been. And that's the part that gets me. It's like people that tell me I'm going to vote for Trump because, I'm in the energy business. Okay. Well, I don't like that, but I understand that. Okay. I get where
Mhm.
you're coming from. And I wish you wouldn't just vote on your pocketbook, but I get that. If you're telling me that you're going to vote for Donald Trump because of your faith in Jesus Christ, that's the part that I'm like, can you just leave my Lord and Savior out of this? Because I don't think that he should be part of your justification. I understand that he gave you pro-life judges. Okay, that is the singular. And if that's your one issue, I understand how that's important to you. I have a lot of friends and family, but that is their one issue. But if you look at how that's played out, it's played out in a very unchristian like way. We have women dying from married women who have 2 children who want a baby dying from miscarriages in Texas because of their draconian laws. And the inability to separate from that and say I'm pro-life, but this is not okay. I'm pro-life. I've always been pro-life, but this party and this has made me, like, if I had to pick a lane right now, I would put myself in the pro-choice lane, because to be a pro-lifer, it means no rape, no incest, no fetal abnormality, and too bad if you die. And that, but because he has put himself out there as the pro-life president until he's not, he's for it until Roe went too far, and then 6 weeks is perfect, and then 6 weeks is too early. I mean, he doesn't care. We all know that he's not a pro-life person. And the kicker that gets me is he, he holds the Bible upside down. He calls it 2 Corinthians. You ask him if he likes the Old Testament or the New Testament, and he's like, I like them both the same. He doesn't ask for forgiveness. Because he's never done anything to ask for forgiveness for. You contrast that against a little girl who grew up in church every week. She learned to sing in the church choir. She prays every day. Like, how do you tell me that she's the terrible, wild-eyed liberal who's going to turn our country into Marxists, and he was saved by God and is chosen to lead our nation? I cannot. It breaks my brain, you guys. It breaks my brain. So help me understand that.
I wonder if race has anything to do with it.
Oh,
I mean, I
do you wonder?
certainly
Do you
think so.
wonder? Race
No.
and gender. Yeah, I mean, those are 2, and gender's right there along with it.
Mhm.
I mean, Todd can probably speak to this, but I grew up believing that women are, to take a back seat to men. Men should lead the household. Men lead the faith. Men lead the country. Men lead. Women follow. Women support. So there's a lot of people out there that will never vote for a woman president, and a lot of them are white women because they think that that's not our place. And you don't see that, interestingly, you don't see that among Black women, because Black women tend to have more of a matriarchal role. And I love that, because they don't, you don't hear Black women say, let me check with my husband about who I should vote for. You don't.
So one of my questions, Gretchen, is so if you're wrong that she gets less than 300 electoral votes, if it's really close,
Mm-hmm.
what happens next? Because Tyr lives right where January 6th was staged, and so he might need to prepare for,
Are you
what comes
downtown?
next.
No, my former church was a quarter mile away from where the ammo was stashed for the last
Oh,
group of tourists
okay.
that gathered on January 6th. So my family does have plans to not be here.
Yeah, I just wouldn't be in town. I mean, and I know that sounds, I wouldn't advise being in the district on election night. I would not advise being in the district the days after election or any more time around January 6th. That's unfortunately the situation that we're in. If it's close, it will be contested. I mean, Donald Trump has already filed like over 100 lawsuits contesting the election, and we haven't finished voting yet. He's already saying that the election was stolen in Pennsylvania. He's already laid that groundwork. He winked at Mike Johnson about our little secret, which I don't know how it's a secret if you say it 5 times out loud, but he has a secret with Mike Johnson that's going to make everything turn out fine. It's clear that they're trying to lay the groundwork to contest this, because I think they see the same. I think the Democrats have internals that show them better than they are, and that's why Kamala keeps saying, "This is close. We're running behind. This is close," because people didn't show up for Hillary because they thought she had it in the bag. That and ignoring the entire Rust Belt is what cost Hillary the race. She's not making that mistake. They're not making that same mistake. The Trump campaign, I think they see some of that same stuff, and I think they realize they're probably not going to win it the right way. So the second way is to go to Madison Square Garden, cause a big stink, start talking about how they're going to lead, just sort of assuming and acting like they've already won. Because what he's going to do is he's going to stand up at about 11 o'clock on election night and declare victory. So I think everybody knows, if the thing is, if everybody knows that he's going to do that, it makes it less scary and less effective, because everybody's ready for that this time. We didn't know what to expect in 16 because we'd never had somebody, 16 was actually fine because he actually won. It wasn't fine because everybody died of shock, but then we woke up and we went on and we had a peaceful transfer of power and we went on. 2020, the thing that's dangerous about Donald Trump is he's shown us where all of our weak spots are in our, a lot of our system is based on norms and understandings of this is how we do it and this is how we behave, and we respect this law and we respect these norms. He doesn't respect any of those. And so it's kind of like, copper come get me at every turn. He does what he wants and he challenges us to stop him. And that's why he's had 91 felony counts against him. And part of it's, sheer desperation, because they know that if he doesn't win, then he's actually going to have to face the music on his 91 felonies and probably some more that have happened in the last, year. So I don't know. I mean, what's going to happen is he's going to contest it. It's going to be ugly. But I do think the lawyers on both sides are ready for it. And it made me feel better talking to Ben Ginsburg, because he's like, they closed some of those loopholes about certification. And the other thing that people need to remember that I did not know is that if you refuse, let's say that Pennsylvania refuses to certify for whatever reason, if they don't certify Donald Trump, they also don't certify anybody down ballot. So you've got House members, Senate races, governors, all those people don't get certified either. So that's not a strategy that's going to work. And I was not really wrapping my head around that. That's a comfortable thing to know. Another thing is there's only two, I'm not trying to be totally partisan here, but we know that the team least likely to accept the outcome of the election are the Republicans, because they've said as much. You have only 2 Republican governors in swing states. The rest are Democrat governors. So, and there's another thing that helps a little bit is that the Democrats currently are occupying the White House, which means Kamala Harris, strangely, is going to preside over the certification. Now, there's really nothing to that now because they've closed that loophole. They've made that officially just a symbolic thing.
She doesn't need to have the courage that Mike Pence didn't have.
She doesn't need to have the courage. Yeah, no. But, that was, he has shown us where our weak spots are. I mean, I guess if we can thank him for something is to point that out, but quite enough.
Right in the top of his obituary.
Right. Thanks for nothing. But I think it's going to be ugly. I think it's going to be very ugly if it's close. But I do think the system will hold. I absolutely think there will be violence. I don't see how you can have 30 million AR-15s in a country and say things like, you're not going to have a country anymore if you don't fight for it. And if he starts saying things today, which he's already saying, which is they're already stealing Pennsylvania. There's no way I can lose. Look how many people are here. There's no way I can lose. Those are all the things that he said in 2020. So I think we know that he's already, that's already in place. I think that is the game plan.
So you're saying no matter the electoral outcome, you think there will be violence?
I worry about it. I worry about it. I mean, I think if she is so clearly, if it's just such a wipeout that maybe not, but I don't see it being a wipeout. I mean, when I say over 300 electoral college votes, I mean, Biden had that too. It wasn't what anybody would call, it wasn't like a Reagan-esque kind of a win. She's not going to get that. She is a woman and she is Black. So the idea that she's going to run the tables is to me ludicrous. But can she win? Can she win handily? I think she can with a little bit more. And Biden, that wasn't close in 2020. I mean, it wasn't close. It was a pretty big margins. It wasn't like 2004 close. So she could have bigger margins than he, because that was before he tried to overthrow the government. And I do think there are quite a few people out there that voted for him in 2020 that may not vote for her, but they're not going to vote for him.
Well, and the race and gender piece of it says more about the electorate than it does about the candidate, right? It says it gives us
Sure.
a snapshot in time of where we're still at, and the way that racism and sexism continues to influence not just the day to day, but the big picture of we're willing to possibly, burn everything down because it's because those two, sins of our nation are so embedded into everything that we do, to the point of self-destruction.
I agree. But I also think that, if I can be equal opportunity critical, I think that a lot of that lies with the left. I think, it's hard for women to be treated equally if we constantly talk about toxic masculinity, and we take things so far for both on the women front and on the race front that people start to feel like they're attacked. It's not okay for women to be put down. It's also not okay for, young men to be left behind. And that's starting to happen too. So what we have to do is we can't just be trying to help, promote young Black women. We need to be promoting young white men and young white women and young brown women and all, everybody at the same time. And in our boomerang society, when we overcorrect, you get into all this super woke stuff, and then people are like, well, just forget it. And I'm going to go, everybody's trying to attack me. And I can't tell you how many guys that are my friends have been like, I'm not going to apologize for being a white man. I'm like, I'm not asking you to. I love white men. I'm married to one and I gave birth to two. Okay. But I just, it's a window into how attacked they feel just for being a 50-something white male Republican. They feel like they've been demonized, and that's not good either. It's not. And I don't know what the answer is. But the fact that 62 countries have had female prime ministers and or leaders before the United States of America says a lot about us. That it's alive and well. And I it's time. It's well past time. Not because she's a woman, just because of who she's running against, partially, and also because she's capable. Like these people that say she's not capable. She was elected statewide in California is the 5th largest economy on the planet, and she was elected statewide 3 times. She was attorney general. She's been vice president of the United States. Contrast that to J.D. Vance, who wrote a hillbilly book, and he was in the Senate for 2 years. And nobody's saying he's not qualified. Nobody's saying that the Apprentice host who declared bankruptcy 6 times and had never run an office for dog catcher, nobody said he wasn't qualified. So this part of that rings racist, and part of that rings, sexist too. They wouldn't say this about a man who was a sitting vice president of the United States. No way.
Yeah. So, Todd, a lot of average Trump voters. So if Donald Trump tries to do the song and dance after the election again of it being stolen, and does everyone just go along with that, or like at what point are they like, wait a minute, this is like the kid who like you try to play tag with on the playground, and he's always like, no, you didn't, at what point do they just like get tired and call bullshit?
We used to hit that kid in the face with a ball during dodgeball. So maybe we can just play dodgeball in the National Mall and take care of the problem.
I mean, I honestly don't know how to answer that. Some I know are certainly probably fit the description of average, but I have listened to some of the most outlandish conspiracy stuff I could ever have heard. So that's already baked in too. So in other words, when I meant we can't see, and the question was we don't want to see. I actually do think that once you commit yourself to seeing things a particular way, you can't see anything else.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
Mhm.
I mean, I think that shows up in the Gospels
Mm-hmm.
repeatedly. And so, I literally do think that the, that there is a good number of, let's put it this way, average people who have already decided how it's going to go. I've been told now for 2 months, wait till October. A lot of weird stuff's going to go down. The only thing that happened is we had a lot of rain in September. We had two hurricanes that evidently, clearly, are the government's fault.
Mm-hmm.
And past that, and FEMA is bankrupt because of immigration. Outside of that, all the things that were predicted to be terrible, they lapse, gone undone at 12:01 a.m. tomorrow. So, I think the other group that I would say are more average. I think they'll be quiet. I think they will become. I think I'm hoping maybe that the embarrassment level is very, very high. I hope that it's, they find a new maxim. Shame on me, shame on you once, shame on me twice. I'm not ever doing
Mm-hmm.
this something like this again. I don't know, because I think in the final bit, I still think that the motivation is the perception of what's going to happen to me. I think it is clearly a more selfish motivation, and I mean selfish to the degree that I don't care what happens to Tier. I'm going to vote because I really have got it in my head that this candidate can drive the price of a barrel um, of oil to $50, even if it'll bankrupt the state of Oklahoma.
I was
Because
at
it
your house
will
2 weeks
bankrupt
ago,
the
and
state of
gas was
Oklahoma.
$2.50. I'm like, what are these people complaining about?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I think what I really do. I think that, if not to essentialize it, but I do think that those I talk to, the greatest fear is that somehow my life's going to be different, and they have not calculated in what ways it will be different if this candidate wins. They've only thought about it if that candidate wins.
Mm-hmm.
And so average is got to be nuanced along those lines, because I do think I never thought I would run into someone who was a true believer in every. I mean, we're talking. I don't care how many articles I point out that there are no such thing as chemtrails; they're contrails, and it's been debunked that they're chemtrails for 40 years. But boy, they're really putting stuff in the atmosphere, and they're trying to hurt us. I'm like, holy smokes! I just
Mm-hmm.
I can't possibly. So I do think that that's the trouble with trying to figure out what the average supporter is going to do, because there's a spectrum that is very hard to nail down, except for that, what, 20-25% that come hell or high water, they're not wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So, Gretchen, this mess may or may not be yours, but I'm wondering about the mess that comes next.
Yeah.
That even if Donald Trump if he wins the election, he immediately becomes a lame duck and has to start having someone taste test his food for him because of JD Vance's voracious ambition. And so, but if Trump loses, what comes next for the Republican Party?
Well, I want to challenge your premise that that he becomes a lame duck if he wins, because if you think that he won't try to stick around, I've got a body of water to sell you in Arizona.
Just go watch the latest movie titled Civil War, and it'll tell you.
Yeah, I haven't. I can't even. I mean, it looks good, but it sends chills down my spine just watching the preview. I can't watch it. So I do think he will challenge and try to stick around because he always talks about how they get to do that in Venezuela. Why can't we do that here? I mean, he hasn't said that once. He said it like 10 times. So I don't know why people don't believe him when he says what he can't keep anything inside. He says exactly what he's thinking, and then he goes and tries to do it. Right. I mean, when he talks about imprisoning Liz Cheney, I can 1000% tell you he's going to try. He tried to imprison Hillary Clinton, and the Justice Department wouldn't do it. But those people are gone now. So he's going to try to do all the things that he's saying. And people that just go, oh, that's just Trump. He doesn't mean it. Yeah, he does. He does mean it. He does mean it. So what will happen to the party if he loses? It's shocking to me that the thing that the Republicans say to me all the time is, gosh, both candidates are just so bad. They love to do the both sides. Like they're both equally bad, right? They're both so bad. I just wish the Republicans would have given us, someone. And I was like, you had a primary. You had like 9 people and he didn't participate in the primary. He wouldn't debate anybody. That's on you. Like, if don't cry me a river that he's your nominee and act like you have to hold your nose and vote for him, because you had other options. You had some good people who could have been better options, and you chose him again for the 3rd time. So, you have him. Does Trumpism die with Donald Trump's defeat? No, it doesn't. Unfortunately, the toothpaste is out of the tube. I don't personally think that the Republican Party will. Okay. I think it was John Meacham that said this. I can't remember who said it, but they're right. They're dead on. If you're under 45 and you're a Republican, then you maybe can hold on and work to get your party back, and you might live to see the Republican Party that used to be, or something similar. If you're over 45, forget it. Until the rest of your life, the Republican Party is going to be unrecognizable, just different. And it's different because that's what the people out there want. One of the reasons that Donald Trump is so dangerous, if anybody out there is on the fence, is because if Kamala Harris, let's say she wants to do some crazy socialist thing, which, by the way, she won't. But if she did, she's going to have a Republican Senate. She's going to get nowhere. She's going to get stopped dead in her tracks. If Trump wants to do something crazy, who's going to stop him? All the people that have stopped him before, which is nobody. I mean, and now you've got a court that's given this ambiguous green light on presidential powers, which has not at all been defined. So you have a guy who really truly believes that he can do anything he wants, and he has shown us that he will. So even without, but you said if he loses, and I'm going to will it into existence. When he loses, you have a bunch of little Trumpian little disciples that have popped up. You've got JD, you've got, JD Catboy, you've got Tucker Carlson. I mean, there's a real good possibility that Tucker Carlson will step into that void and become the loudest voice in the room, because that's what they're used to. Part of the reason that people think things are so bad, like the economy's so bad, is we've never had somebody step off the stage of the presidency and stand in the wings of the stage and scream all day, every day about how terrible things are with a dedicated audience. It's never happened. So if he tells you every day that things are terrible, people start to believe things are terrible, even though when they look at it and they're like, actually, my life's not terrible, but everybody else's life is terrible. So it must be terrible. That's what happens when people hear the same thing over and over. So there's such a big group out there that really believes that MAGA is the way forward. MAGA is not going anywhere. It's going to be around. I just don't know who the leader is going to be. All these Republicans, though, that think that once he's gone, we're going to bounce back to being, John Cornyn and John Thune and all the people that aren't nuts. I mean, I'm just like, okay, I hope you're right, but I think that's gone, because the Republicans are afraid of their base, and their base wants the crazy, and that's where they are right now. The Democrats, for all of the things that drive me crazy about the Democrats, and I'll say it again, I'm not a Democrat. I don't like a lot of, her thing about price gouging makes me want to bite myself. There's stuff that she says that I don't like. But, to me, this election's way bigger than, talking about fracking. This is about where we're going next as a nation. And so that's why it's important. But what was I saying? I lost myself. But I think, what's that? What's next?
Yeah.
But the thing is, if Donald Trump you know, if the Republicans, the reason that the Republicans won't stand up to him is because of their base. It's everybody talks about Mitch McConnell. Nobody hates Mitch McConnell. Nobody hates Donald Trump more than Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell has burning hatred in his soul for Donald Trump. But it's like that movie where, like, you know, in the movies when they think the bad guy's dead and they start walking around and talking to each other, but the bad guy's still got a gun like right next to him, and then he steps up at the last minute and shoots the hero. Like, that's what happened. I mean, he really thought Trump was dead. He thought Trump was done, and he didn't turn the knife, and then he came back. But the reason that he didn't want to turn the knife is because he didn't want his senators to lose. He didn't want everybody to pay a price in the primaries. He knew that the MAGA people would throw out anybody who voted to take Trump down. They would come back at them with a vengeance. Look what they did to the great senator from Oklahoma who tried to work with Democrats and pass an immigration bill. The Republican Party censored him. So for working with Democrats to try to fix a problem. That's where we are right now. That's what this party is doing. And I say this party because they're not both doing that. And the Democrats don't have a lockstep position. They have to work for their votes. They have dissenters all the time. Nobody stands up to Donald Trump and nobody dissents. It's not allowed. And so when you have a party like that, it's no longer a political party. It's a cult. I know people say it, but it is. And you have to have two functioning parties for our system to work.
Well,
yeah, I know. It's just like,
Jason, give us some hope.
I know.
No, I'm just like,
Well,
more depressed
okay,
than I
I'll give
was
you some
before.
hope. I'll give you some hope. So if he does lose, I mean, there are a lot of, I would say the majority of the Republican Senate would love nothing more than for him to be gone. I mean, in whatever way. Just gone. He makes their life a living hell. There's a lot of House members as well. There's a ton of governors as well. There are still good Republicans out there. There really are. They're cowardly in my view, but their position is, if I stand up to this guy, they're going to take me out and they're going to replace me with a wackadoodle. And then you're not going to have anybody in there doing any good things. And so I get that. I get the idea. But it still drives me crazy because it feels like cowardice and it feels like it's empowered him to become what he's become. But there are a lot of good Republicans out there, and absent Donald Trump, which, by the way, J.D. Vance isn't Donald Trump. Marco Rubio tried to be Donald Trump. None of these people have whatever that thing is that he has that allows him to do things that nobody else gets away with. They don't have that. You know, little Marco with his white boots. I mean, he was trying real hard down in Florida to like be just like him. It doesn't fly for whatever reason. I mean, Donald Trump can put on a big like orange vest and ride around in a trash truck. And, you know, if that's not Dukakis like, I don't know what is. I mean, Donald Trump in a trash truck is sort of symbolic of everything, is it not? Like, I don't know, but he gets away with it. Marco Rubio couldn't ride around in a trash truck. You know, J.D. Vance couldn't ride around in a trash truck. So, I mean, J.D. Vance barely won his Senate race as is. He's not exactly a likable fella. So,
Well, yeah, I mean, there is. I mean, Trump has charisma. That's why fascism works.
Yeah, I mean, whatever it is, he does have it, and these other folks
JD
don't.
And Tucker, and they're all just humorless men.
They are, but there are still some serious people and serious leaders and public servants left in the United States Senate that aren't crazy. There are still some. There are. One from Oklahoma that I know of. I don't know. I'm not sure about the other one, but one from Oklahoma for sure.
Definitely not the other.
I don't know about the hyphenated name guy, but yeah. I think that there are a lot of Republicans that will be secretly rejoicing if he loses. I think there's a lot of Republicans that are high-ranking Republicans that will not vote for him. They're just not going to be honest about it. Maybe I have too much faith in America, but I do. I do have faith in us. I believe in our system. I believe ultimately that America is going to make the right decision. And we look at 2020. That was before he actually refused to hand over power, you guys. Like that cannot be nothing. Like, I know it's been an eternity, but it can't be nothing. It can't be.
So,
right?
All right. The Southern Baptist excluded here, but Gresham, you are free in Christ to gamble. And so bet me lunch the outcome on Tuesday.
For House, Senate, and President,
Yes.
are we upping it?
Ooh.
Senate's going to go Republican. House usually goes with the White House. I mean, almost always. There's about 7 seats in play on the House that the Democrats could easily pick up in the House. I think they'll pick up. I mean, there's 4 of them in New York alone. I think it's an outside chance that Ted Cruz can lose it. I say it because it just fills me with delight to think about it. It makes me giggle inside, makes me all fluttery. Actually, I would love to see Larry Hogan win over also Brooks, because I think he's actually a really good Republican who's not nuts. And I'd love to see more not crazy Republicans in the Senate. That would be good. So my prediction is Kamala wins. She wins with over 300 electoral votes. House goes to the Democrats. Senate goes handily to the Republicans with 52, probably 52 seats. Maybe 53, but probably 52. I could see Marino in Ohio losing just because he's kind of said some despicable things about women. I think North Carolina, might not have been in play, but the gubernatorial candidate there kind of hurts the ticket. So I think it's very much in play. And, I think him running around saying all that nasty stuff about FEMA when I'm on the board of the YMCA for the Blue Ridge Assembly, which is the YMCA of the Southern states, and they're in Black Mountain, North Carolina. FEMA was there within 12 hours. So all these Christians, that's a very evangelical Christian pocket. People talk about Asheville being so blue, but all around Asheville is it's Billy Graham's home. That was his stomping ground. There's a lot of evangelicals.
Super Methodist too.
Yeah. Yes. And so, and Presbyterians, Montreat is Presbyterian, so it's a lot, but it's evangelical-ish. It's very conservative. There would be a lot of Trump voters, but a lot of those people were very, very upset that he was saying what he was saying. When you have militias roaming around trying to, block FEMA workers, they're trying to get people water and safety. Like, that's not okay. And, people talk about his rhetoric just like it's just an eye roll. It's not. It has real consequences. He hurts people with his words all the time. So I think that they're banking that the Republicans are going to come home. I'm banking that they're not. I'm banking that the Republicans looked at what happened on January 6th. Maybe they voted for them once or twice and they're like, no more. They're sick of this guy. 9 years of this nonsense and hateful talk and dividing us apart, just pulling us apart. Look, Kamala Harris may not be my dream president. I may have to turn around and podcast against her, in a couple of years. I'm actually a person that wants every president to succeed, and I hope that she does well. I actually thought that Donald Trump, as much as I was mortified when he got elected in 2016, I thought he would grow into the job because everybody always does. It usually turns out to be okay. And he was, true to form, the outlier, and he did not turn out to be okay. But usually they do. But my point is, she's not my pie in the sky candidate, but for right now, she is. She's capable. She's good. She's run a good campaign. I've already voted. I'm excited. I was happy to vote for her. And I think that, I think she's going to win this thing. And I think we're going to be able to kind of move on and close the Trump chapter and start to heal a little bit. I really do.
All right.
Fingers crossed.
Thank you, Gretchen.
But I want to go to lunch with you anyway, even though I'm going to win.
What I'm hearing, though, is if worst case scenario happens, at least Jason's getting a lunch out of it.
That's right. We can all go to lunch.
There's an upside for you, Jason.
Todd, fly up. We'll go to lunch.
All right, I'll do it.
I'll have to have something to look forward to if the worst case, the unimaginable happens.